Later that morning, the Monkey King ordered a messenger to see that Mama heeded his command.
"Has the child been turned over to She?
The king's message read. Mama was able to answer yes in all honesty, thereby ensuring the welfare of her brood. And so the kittens grew to be cats without bourgeois by their side. They became palace guards, as was their destiny. Young bourgeois appeared to be destined for little more than pleasure. Her days were spent frolicking on the fortress grounds with Shuang Wei, the two-tailed monkey she called sister. Together they climbed trees, swung on vines, tossed coconuts, munched bananas, splashed in the river, danced in the fields, and napped in the sun. It was as perfect an existence as any monkey could dream, and for a cat it was nearly ideal. But paradise was lost to them by the very means they'd found it, with an edict from the Monkey King. His Highness had grown ill, deathly so, and the only prince, Boya, had proven himself unfit to rule, leaving Shuang Wei heir apparent. While the palace continued to view her deformity with shame, her brother's folly sustained a profound disgrace. At a formal dinner attended by several allied heads of state, the prince swung topsy-turvy from jewel-encrusted chandeliers and smeared banana mash on the hand-blocked wallpaper. As the meal progressed, his antics grew bolder still. During the soup course, he belched so loudly that the porcelain bowls on the table cracked, spilling piping hot soup into all the diners' laps. Then, in the middle of dessert, the prince, feeling rather full, relieved himself atop his silk-upholstered chair, creating a putrid stench that not only ended the meal abruptly, but caused much of it to be heaved, which in turn stained the antique camel hair carpet. A dozen palace maids scoured the dining room for weeks before it could be used again. In hindsight, it was clear the wrong monkey sibling had been sent upriver. However, there was no reversing time. Shuang Wei possessed many virtues her elder brother would never know. Honesty, kindness, wisdom, patience, courage, fine leadership qualities indeed. But her upbringing had been deficient of pomp and circumstance, of regal dignities and royal decorum. In this regard, as well as countless others, she was no different from the servant's child bourgeois. With the king expected to perish before the year's end, only weeks remained, months at best, to turn the rough-and-tumble princess into a noble queen. The greatest teachers in the land were summoned to hasten this transformation. Shuang Wei's lessons went from dawn to dusk. First there were the basics, reading, writing, arithmetic. Then history, politics, philosophy and religion, not only of her own people, but of all those surrounding Monkey Kingdom. There was also public speaking, courtly dance, dress and manner, a smattering of music and art, and afterward table etiquette was practiced for hours over lingering 5-course meals. Shuang Wei's easygoing nature and agile mind allowed her to progress rapidly, but what, she wondered, was to become of poor bourgeois? At Monkey Palace there would be no cat sibling allowed, no matter how beloved she may be. While Shuang Wei was being tutored, bourgeois spent her days subserving Chu Shi, the king's personal chef dispatched to the fortress to prepare cuisine fit for a royal palate. Gone were the leisurely outdoor meals of fresh hand-picked fruit the sisters had shared, often without ever leaving the tree branches. Now there were chairs to sit on, posture perfect, tails tucked in, a table set with more implements than bourgeois could count. New rules came with these new ways. Royal decree ordained that cats were to eat after and not with the princess. While there was ample left from Shuang Wei's every repast, such delicacies, not to mention such arrangements, weren't at all to bourgeois' liking. Try as she might to appreciate the bounty, her preference was for the plain and simple foods on which she'd been raised. Chu Shi, a fellow cat, the first bourgeois had met since infancy, found this terribly peculiar. He offered Mishi, or long-lost one, as he called her, Samples of the finest fish, seafood, poultry, beef, pork, and lamb in all the region, hoping to rouse her oblivious taste buds. Alas, the amnesia flourished. Bourgeois' memory of a life prior to that which she shared with Shuangwei had grown dimmer each passing year until it was cloudy as milk glass. Though she was of the same species as Chu Shi, appearance alone confirmed the fact. Bourgeois was otherwise as much a monkey as she was a cat. Initially, she had trouble understanding the language Chu Shi spoke, but Bourgeois worked diligently to reacquaint herself with her mother tongue. Soon she was able to answer direct inquiries, and when Chu Shi appealed for assistance outside the kitchen, she was more than willing to comply. Back in Monkey Kingdom, Chu Shi had provided local cats with remnants from the royal table. At the end of each day, he'd distributed surplus to a long line of famished felines. After extravagant banquets, he doled out treats well past dawn. But now, with his new position, such charitable deeds were impossible. Or so it seemed, until Bourgeois stepped in with her trusty accomplices. While the fortress was surrounded by moats both impenetrable and inescapable, its alligator sentries freely made their way hither and yon. So Bourgeois invoked the aid of these creatures, her long-time friends, requested passage to and from Monkey Kingdom. Alligator rides were risky, true. One never knew what the current might bring. But the dragon-claw talisman would protect Bourgeois from the river's hazards. Still, there were perils to be faced ashore, outside of Jushui's jurisdiction. An anxious Chu Shi insisted on accompanying his long-lost one, and was unfamiliar with the lay of the land and the ways of her people. "It was once my home," argued Bourgeois, or Mishi, as the chef had fondly dubbed her. "Surely I can find my way back."
"It is still my home. Please, allow me to guide you,"
Chu Shi implored. Since his arrival at the fortress, the frugal Chu Shi had been drying, canning, and preserving excess food. There would be plenty to go around, enough to feed all those in need, and for many a day. Chu Shi might relieve the cat's hunger, but he could not allay their pain, though he knew all too well of the cruelty and humiliation they endured. In the Monkey Kingdom, random beating, whipping, and stoning of cats occurred on a regular basis. Such treatment was alien to Bourgeois, who lived concordantly with Shuangwei behind the protective walls of the fortress. With no one to teach the odd pair wrong, they had simply grown up right. Chu Shi attempted to apprise Bourgeois of the sorrows she'd left downriver, but his eyes welled with tears as he was overcome by emotion. After several such efforts, the alligators, who were unable to cry, crept in and alerted Bourgeois to the evils of Monkey Kingdom. Before they'd been called to the fortress, where they protected the royal reputation more than the royal princess, the reptiles had witnessed the suffering of many a cat firsthand. And they'd heard from their parents, who'd heard from theirs through ancestors bygone, of the terrible war that had started it all. Some centuries ago, when the kingdom was merely a settlement, two camps cohabited there, an extended family of cats and a monkey clan. The monkeys were rambunctious creatures, unruly and robust, pleasure seekers first and foremost, little different from monkeys today. The cats were sober and staid, much as cats are at present, far more apt to concern themselves with practical matters. With a small herd of cattle at their mutual disposal, squabbling amongst the camps was inevitable. The cats wished to breed the cows for milk, while the monkeys, who were lactose intolerant and averse to heavy labor, preferred that they be used as beasts of burden. Hence, a tribal skirmish began. By and by, the skirmish grew into a battle, which quickly heated and erupted into war. Though the cats were adept fighters, they refused to indulge in guerrilla tactics, as their lofty principles forbade it. This, unfortunately, enabled the roguish, rascally monkeys to climb their way to victory. A greater loss befell the cats when the small herd promptly perished. The monkeys had harnessed the cattle and driven them to death, rendering them bundles of skin and bone. Dairy famine ensued, killing many a cat by starvation, while the primarily herbivorous monkeys thrived. Those cats who survived were far too weak to go to war again, so they succumbed to slavery, replacing the oxen as beasts of burden. Cat or cattle, the monkeys did not discern, though they did discriminate. Thereof, the cats prayed to the Milky Way for salvation, and continued to do so ever since. Shuangwei would be the umpteenth monarch to ascend Monkey Kingdom's throne. Bourgeois couldn't help but feel an untoward mixture of envy and shame. Were the cats unworthy of a homeland or a ruler of their own? Why hadn't anyone dared attempt to set them?